When do we talk about philosophy? When do we talk about politics? I am not an academic. I want to talk about these things when they matter. And when you talk about the questions when they really matter, people get upset, people get offended, and people also get energized and motivated to make a difference. To make a positive difference, sometimes. I think when somebody like Ted Carr makes a statement such as, the meaning of life is joy, the reason why you're alive, all of your goals should just be the pursuit of your own personal happiness, short-term happiness, joy. He's making a philosophical statement. He's making a philosophical claim that's worth debating. It's worth debating in and of itself. It would be worth debating if nobody watched Ted Carr's YouTube channel, if nobody had heard of Ted Carr within veganism as a movement. It's even more worth debating because it's a philosophical question that's linked to a bunch of political problems within veganism as we know it today. Veganism as it takes its baby steps towards being a real political movement. I'll give you another example. Ladies and gentlemen, Ted Carr.
The image of being that person who deserves that. And we all get what we deserve. And we deserve whatever we're imagining for ourselves. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, neutral, whatever. We all get what we deserve. I deserve to have this graffiti in the background right here, this backdrop. I deserve this backdrop right now. I deserve the camera I'm holding. I deserve this black t-shirt I'm wearing. I deserve the shoes I'm wearing. I deserve the jeans I'm wearing. I deserve to be in Chiang Mai right now, in the city. I deserve that, man. You deserve to be watching this video right now. You do, because you are. We get what we deserve.
Now, many people have said to me that Ted Carr is merely offering a poorly reasoned mishmash of quotations from self-help books that he may or may not have even read himself. That the whole line of his reasoning is so far beneath contempt that I shouldn't be discussing it or debating it. I don't know. I actually think that, for one thing, I do think that what a lot of Ted Carr is saying is original from his own perspective. He may have never read those books, or he may have. I think he's being sincere. And in the same sense that anyone can reinvent the wheel, I think that a lot of people have the same thoughts, have the same questions as Ted Carr. And evidently, a lot of people do come to the same conclusions. Whether or not that's because they're actually reading the same books, or just that they have the same interests, they have the same fantasies, they have the same dreams. And they come up with similar sets of reasons to justify that outlook on life. I don't know. But when someone like Ted Carr makes a statement, as he just did, that everyone gets what they deserve, that whatever you've got in life, it is what you deserve, that the world, the universe, God, some cosmic force beyond our imagining, he is claiming, provides each and every one of us with only what we deserve. A lot of Christians in the United States used to say things like, God never gives you more than you can manage, more than you can bear, this kind of thing. But this is a step beyond. This is saying whatever your current situation is, whatever your future situation is, you're getting what you deserve. It is shocking to me. It's immoral from my perspective. It's offensive, I could even say. But it's also worth debating. And it's worth debating now because people believe it and people are influenced by it and people care about it and people embrace it. And, you can sit in a university classroom and discuss philosophy with people who don't really disagree with you, or people who are only disagreeing with you because they're going to receive a grade, like it's a graded assignment. But I think for those of us who have some background in philosophy and politics to take the time of our day to really address these misconceptions and their implications, I think it still is worthwhile. I think it still is important. And I know that my taking the time to deal with these sorts of things, I know that it does actually impact people's lives because I get emails back from people explaining to me exactly how it's impacted their lives. We can jump to the most extreme example imaginable because this is the internet. If you really believe that everybody gets what they deserve without exception, then you would have to believe that in the Holocaust, in World War II, in the atrocities carried out by the Nazis, that the people who were put into death camps got what they deserved. Ted Carr, that is an absolutely ineluctable implication of your philosophy. But you can turn it around. The main implication of your philosophy is that everyone who was simply born rich deserves what they were born into. And I think that is what's on your mind, Ted. I think that's what's weighing down your soul. I think that justifications for inequality and wealth and privilege is what is on your mind when Ted Carr says that he deserves to be in Thailand. And to me, the depth of this misconception, the depth of this delusion, is proven by the fact that he really sincerely thinks that in saying this, he's saying something that's going to motivate you positively to work harder to make a better future for yourself. I don't know, Ted, what about someone who has the exact opposite philosophy to your own? What about someone who gets to Thailand, who moves to Chiang Mai, and feels that they don't deserve this, that they have to do something meaningful in order to deserve it? Don't you think that person would be more highly motivated to make a positive difference in the world? What about somebody who goes to Chiang Mai and, just a simple example, and just feels, hey, if I want to be part of this society, if I want to be positively engaged with what's going on in northern Thailand, if I want to live here, I've got to learn to speak the language. I've got to put in hundreds of hard hours sitting down with a book and a pen and paper, teaching myself the Thai language, if I want to feel that I belong, if I want to feel that I deserve to be part of this city. What about someone, let's say there's no language barrier. What if you move to New York City and you want to feel like you deserve to live in New York City, and your little way of doing that, because you feel like you don't deserve it, is to go to City Hall and pay attention to what's going on in politics and get a little bit involved with, I don't know, let's say the movement to try to raise the minimum wage. Any political or social movement. A movement, okay, so this is New York City as the example. River pollution in the river water. Huge issue for New York City. What if someone said to you, you know what, when I moved to Chiang Mai or when I moved to New York City, I didn't feel that I deserved it. I didn't feel that an airplane ticket entitled me to be a part of this society. I didn't feel that my opinion mattered in this society just because I bought an airplane ticket and showed up here as a tourist. I needed to feel like I was making a positive contribution by learning the language, by going to City Hall, by doing research, by caring, by trying to make this little part of the world a better place in some way. That's what I felt I needed to do. And then after I'd done that, maybe after I'd done that for 5 years, maybe after only 6 months, I felt better. I felt that when I had an opinion about local politics, I deserved to be listened to. Even though I was a newcomer, even though I was a new immigrant or a tourist or an expatriate, because I'd learned the language, I'd gone to City Hall, I'd done some charity work, I'd been concerned about the environment, I'd been concerned about the middle wage, I'd been concerned about the minimum wage, something, anything, some shred of human moral fiber, decency, duty, obligation, public service. This concept from Ted appears in the midst of a longer and more complex philosophical argument that, again, it is genuinely a philosophical argument. It's just an argument I happen to disagree with. I would not say Ted Carr doesn't have a philosophy. He has a philosophy that I think is 180 degrees wrong. He starts off by telling us that 2017 should be the year in which we improve our self-image. But what he sets out, I think, is actually a plan to pursue image dysphoria, lying to yourself about your self-image. The fact that you bought an airplane ticket to New York doesn't mean that you're a New Yorker, right? The fact that you got money doesn't mean that you deserve money. so on down the line. The fact that you've got anything, good or bad, doesn't mean that you deserve it. I mean, Ted Carr, I just think he's never studied any example from the political history of the world. You know, there are so many situations in which terrible things happen to good people, terrible things happen to people they didn't deserve. But let's leave that aside. It can't be the main argument of this video. But yes, absurdly, Ted Carr would claim that people who were put into concentration camps deserve to be there simply because they were there, which is a sickening and immoral ethical philosophy. That does not take a genius to point out. Ted Carr begins this little essay by telling us that 2017 should be the year in which we improve our self-image. He talks about setting goals. But Ted, how can it be that you are so deep into this self-deception that you don't see that by telling people they already deserve everything they've got, and they already deserve everything they will have in the future, this is a disincentive for people to actually plan and actually work towards goals? It's surreal to me. It's 180 degrees wrong. But Ted's idea of setting goals does not involve planning. It does not involve hard work to deserve those outcomes. His idea of setting goals is to encourage you to pretend that you've already achieved those goals. So to say, to me, is actually psychologically unhealthy. It actually resembles image dysphoria, right? If you plan to become a medical doctor, why would you tell yourself now at the planning stage that you already are a medical doctor? If you plan to learn to speak the Chinese language or the Thai language or even English, why would you pretend that you already can speak that language? Even if it's a difference of degree. Let's say your goal for 2017 was to raise your ability, your level of ability in speaking English from speaking it in a very uncertain, stuttering way with a thick accent. Maybe you're a new immigrant and you speak English but with a very bad accent. You want to raise it so you can speak fluently, convincingly. If you behaved as if you already could do that before you did all the hard work, what would you be? Arrogant, deluded, privileged, entitled. Let's stick to that. Arrogant, deluded, privileged, entitled. That's what you would be. And you would be laughable. You'd be speaking English incredibly poorly and behaving as if you were entitled to some other reaction. Same would be true of myself learning Chinese. I have to remain humble, and learning languages is an extremely humbling experience, and I've been humbled again and again by studying so many different languages. But he doesn't think of these kinds of examples. We'll move on to some of the other examples. And again, this is part of the same ideological package as this fundamental delusion. You deserve whatever you've got. Quote, "We all get what we deserve," close quote. Ted Carr. Start pretending to be a success right now, he tells us. Start pretending to be a successful athlete. Start describing yourself as if you're already a successful businessman. Start thinking of yourself as already thin if you're fat, as already... Does it take so much imagination and human sympathy to realize how buffoonish, how ridiculous someone would be if they behave that way, even with the examples he's selected, let alone the examples of learning a language? Do you not see how invidious it is, how much it would create terrible conflict and hatred? If somebody shows up in the company of other painters, artists, people who paint pictures, people who devoted years of their lives to building up the skill to paint a canvas, and they behave as if they're already a highly accomplished, highly trained, highly disciplined, highly practiced painter, why would you think of yourself that way? You would seem deluded, entitled, arrogant, and you'd be offensive to the people around you who had the humility, who had the self-discipline, who had the education or the training or the long hours, whether it's the long hours sitting alone studying a language or the long hours sitting and practicing the painting. He gives the example, though, of how long before he was an accomplished athlete, he claims he's an accomplished athlete in the triathlon, he would think of himself and talk about himself as already being an athlete, already being a triathlon athlete. I don't know how that would go over with other people, Ted, who made the sacrifices to really be athletes, when you haven't made those sacrifices yet. But I can tell you, in the art world, you would be hated by other painters who put in the decades of hard work when you didn't. In the language world, okay, look, very, very small number of white men have learned to speak a language like Cree or Ojibwe. Ted Carr's Canadian, he should care about the shit. A larger number of white men and women, have learned Inuit, the Inuit language, Inuktitut, I believe. Extremely hard work. Anyone can Google this. You know what? Go to Google and just Google Cree, months of the year. Look at the names of December, January, February, March. There's a goal for you, Ted Carr. Do you think you could just learn the names of the months of the year in one native language, one native Canadian language like Cree? It's incredibly hard work. And you have to remember the vowels correctly, the spelling correctly, and practice saying them, the pronunciation. Whew. I've met a couple of those guys. I've met a couple of the white men who put in the incredibly hard work to learn native Canadian languages, whether Cree or Ojibwe or otherwise, okay? You know, years of struggle and suffering. And it's not an exaggeration. It's hard. It's horrible. And when they talk to me, so then when I met them, let's say I've been studying Cree for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. I think I was involved with that for less than a year and a half. Not much less, but, you know, I was at First Nations University studying those languages. I never once lied to them. I never once deceived them about my level of accomplishment or even my level of commitment or my level of ability. But you know what they could relate to? I could say to them, I know what it's like to sit under a mosquito net in Southeast Asia and to study a language for hundreds of hours alone with no teacher and no textbook and no school. I know that hard work because I've done it for other languages. So I know I can come here and do it for your language. And I want to, and I care. And here's my passion. Here are my motivations. Here's how I'm going to do it. And of course, I mean, that's a mix of confidence and humility. And of course, the response I got was tremendously positive. And you know what? Let's keep it all the way real, Ted. I met a lot of people who were ethnically Cree, ethnically Ojibwe, sometimes other First Nations groups. Well, let's stick with those two. I met a lot of people who were Cree Ojibwe, and they had your attitude, Ted. They had the attitude that they already spoke those languages, that they already were highly accomplished when they'd never put in that work. And one of the reasons they could get away with that was that most of the time they were in a context where they could pretend they knew the language and nobody could question them. But then when they came to my university, it would pretty soon be revealed that maybe they knew 5 or 6 words that they had heard from their grandfather or their grandmother, and that was it. They couldn't say a single sentence in the language. They had never put in the work. They had never sat down with the list of the names of the 12 months and learned the 12 months. They couldn't do math in the language. They couldn't ask, how much does this cost? They couldn't say, here's $10, give me $5 back. They couldn't do anything with the language. They did not know the language. They never studied the language. But a lot of them, Ted, I met many people like that, Ted, who have your attitude, your think positive attitude. And you know what? It comes off as arrogant and deluded and insulting to the people who understand what the work is and the people who really do the work and the people who really care. And in that case, you're talking about a language that's going extinct. And I can say, setting aside, languages as the example, there's something similar in humanitarian work. When I was involved in humanitarian work, you can spend months and months and months trying to find a project, and then the actual project lasts for 6 weeks. You spend a lot of time looking for opportunities to do something positive in humanitarian work, and then you get a very brief opportunity to do something positive. And Ted, anything, like if you now, you're living in Thailand, if you get off your ass and actually get concerned about the refugees who right now are crossing the border from northern Myanmar to northern Thailand, if you get interested in the civil war that's happening outside your window and the refugee camps, if you get involved in a humanitarian cause, you'd better bring that kind of pragmatic, humble, down-to-earth attitude and not pretend that you are something you aren't, not pretend that you've accomplished something you haven't accomplished, and not pretend that you deserve something you do not deserve. Ted Carr, this is one part of your philosophy. As you say, people should behave as if they've already accomplished things they haven't accomplished, and they should behave as if they deserve things they do not deserve. Both the things they actually have and the things they don't have yet. That is a formula for entitlement, privilege, arrogance. And it's invidious. It will make other people hate you. Because other people who have actually done that work, who have actually become a painter, who've actually learned to speak a language, who are actually doing humanity, whatever the example is, people who are actually athletes, people who know what it's like to wake up at 5:30 in the morning because of their coach or because of the team, stuff you can't relate to because you're not an athlete, Ted Carr. You're a fraud. You're not even an athlete. And this whole problem, I think, is invisibly and ineluctably connected to Ted's broader philosophy that the meaning of life is joy. The meaning of life is just short-term self-indulgence and personal happiness. And it's only from that perspective that anyone could subscribe to a philosophy that is so odious, that is so destructive and self-destructive, so obviously immoral, as to suggest that in a world full of so many terrible tragedies, whatever happens to you, good or bad, is what you deserve.